organise the response.
Started.
Are you?
All right. So,
Sure.
Anitra and Francois, we're on camera. Maybe we can start with each of you introducing yourself just briefly, and then we'll get to what your new book is about, what your sort of passion about housing is. But first, the introductions.
My name is Anitra Nelson. I live in Australia, in central Victoria. I'm affiliated with RMIT University, and I've been a social activist since I was a teenager in both social and environmental campaigns.
So my name is Francois Schneider. I've been active very much in the transport issue, in degrowth basically since 2001. Been like active with going around, like making a walk in France. It led to lots of start of groups in France at the time, and then to the start of the degrowth conference. I was like by myself 10 years ago, like trying to convince people, let's do degrowth conference. It's very important. Like, but housing is very important because I'm also in a project which try to create a little, a kind of like little degrowth world, like
In the south of France.
Yeah, it's really about a system which involves lots of group innovation and also frugal innovation. Let's call it like that.
Okay.
Yeah. For me, the main interest is to housing is like one of a key area, but I think there are many key areas.
But so when you say housing, what exactly do you mean? It's not just the home, right? I presume it's more than that. It's not just the structure.
No, it's like at different levels with different. It's not just about the roof. It's about linking to lots of activities around where we live, and it relates also, for example, to neighborhoods. It relates to the way we organize at the regional level. It relates to policy. It relates to a place where we feel secure. There's so many functions, so many. It's behind so many fundamental needs actually. Yeah.
It's mainly in capitalism that the home has shrunk to just being like a worker's home, and
or an investment. An investment
asset.
product. Like I don't know. That's the worst. Like.
But some of the ways that degrowth housing is moving in directions of encouraging greater collective sufficiency of households so that they're providing a lot more of their basic needs for direct use. So the home is a much richer kind of environment, and the neighbourhood is a lot more important than people who are living mainstream lives.
So, but I mean, in our kind of countries, what we see with housing is enormous disparities, right? Lots and lots of people with inadequate housing, very poor housing, and then some people with, like, we probably have the world's biggest single-family house, which is 27 stories high in Mumbai. So, in your vision, how does that whole inequality kind of, what's the role of housing, let's say, in reducing, or how does one reduce that kind of inequality?
No, the first thing is that in Europe, at least, there are enough houses for everybody. If we take into account all the empty houses, all the empty, like the houses that are empty most of the year, like that are many houses are used only 1 week per year, and there are many people that live alone in big houses, and then there are all the people that don't have houses. So I mean, the matter is not so much to increase the capacity of housing. Some houses are maybe not in the right place, but this we have to rethink also. I think many places we can develop also activity when there is actually housing available. But that's a whole rethinking of all this. But for sure, at the level of we don't need more housing constructions and so on in total, at least in Europe. Then I don't know in India, but that's a different question.
But there are two things. So the link is that if the global north can shrink, like really shrink seriously, that's where the degrowth needs to occur. So that people who haven't got enough at the moment can actually have their basic needs met. So it's happening in reverse ways, depending on where you are. But even in European countries, there are people who are homeless or not getting enough to eat or whatever. So it's a matter of recognising universal rights for people. So degrowth kind of expresses itself in a variety of ways, and satisfaction of people's basic needs, which might mean you having more, is just as important as people degrowing when they are over-consuming. The other thing is, in our book we actually have a couple of chapters. One of them is by a South Indian architect who lives in what was called Bengaluru, and she's advocating for instance, where there are new houses built, actually digging down and taking the earth out to make mud bricks, that becoming a basement. And then she says that if you use, in a lot of places, the earth that is taken out of under the house, under the site of one house, can actually be used for enough bricks for two houses. So there are places where it's impossible, people are building on rock or whatever. So, and also the buildings that she's been involved with, they use landfill in for some of the materials, but also, and she says just as importantly, they're encouraging the builders to have more of an artisan kind of relationship with what they're doing, and for their conditions to be good, rather than the mainstream housing where everything is de-skilled, and so there are poor conditions for workers, and they're basically exploiting the environment in the way that they're making those buildings. There's another chapter by Wendy Christie, who's also an architect, who talks about Vanuatu, which is like numerous islands that are formed a Pacific nation. And there, after Cyclone Pam, where there was great destruction, one of the things that they noticed was the traditional buildings had stood up quite well, and also the international aid was so slow coming in that all the villagers were collectively building together, and like it was a really perfect example of resilience in traditional ways. So I do think that there are different things happening in different areas. But say like in Australia, we should be learning a lot more from our Indigenous people.
So what are the sort of, you have a number of case studies in this book. You have some sort of common elements coming out of these, which like common, you said principles.
Well, the first thing is that we don't have to wait for big social system change before we have to do something in housing. Housing is an area that we need to solve now, and there's lots of actions going now on this. We really see the system change in actually all the actions. So that's the first thing, and then there's not one solution. It's about we're not searching. We're not supporting that there's going to be one solution or something that will be the master plan or something. It's about really a lot of solutions, lots of proposals, lots of alternatives that exist already, in which many people are involved. Almost, I think everybody is in some way organized, already developing some little alternative, and some people are developing big alternatives. But everybody, and to understand the story that, these interlinks is very important, because it's not just about, it's great, there is this diversity. No, it's about understanding why it's important to have a real coalition between all the actors around housing, but it would be the same with transport, with all the other sectors. Understand that if we understand what's the story behind, we understand that we're all involved in it. It's not about like I don't know, 90, you know, just a little minority aware on all the 99% completely unaware on. No, it's like we have to build like a new story together. This is like the story that it's
so
about
this
the
links the principles.
it's about the
we
right,
have.
yeah, the right for housing, which links to the right for simplicity in housing. You know, it's like
Yeah, so,
on one hand there are people that have enormous houses and that keep empty houses and so on. This is like unjust when you think of people that don't have home. But then there are people that have the right to build and so on. Big things and big urbanizations, while other people that want simply, that just want the right to live simply and actually that don't want to spend so much money in housing and so on, they don't have the right to do so. Yeah. And then there is like all these things about sharing, the right for sharing things on all this, if it's put in practice, like all this, this collective housing, could be co-housing, could be house sharing, flat sharing, all this enables to really reduce the need to build. And this has really important consequences on the use of land, on the use of destruction of land and so on.
So all these principles are interlinked, and we've structured our book around these kinds of principles. So we've got a few chapters about each of them. But as Francois says, justice is one of those things that if you address social justice, then you actually find that sufficiency is not such a big issue to encourage people to be observing, just having their own fair share, because they're not competing and there's not this aspirational inequality and everything happening. And this is why all of these principles are all interlinked. And we choose chapters where there are case studies of these particular principles being enacted in practice in a kind of hopeful way in that sense. So it's a bit critical, the book, in terms of its approach, but it's mainly constructive and showing ways forward, but also probably critical self-reflection in terms of degrowth and some of the limits and some of the hurdles and things that aren't being achieved.
Is there a gender perspective also that's here? I don't see it here, but I mean, I'm sure you've thought about that.
An agenda.
No, gender perspective.
Oh, gender perspective, yeah. We don't have a specific chapter that's kind of like labelled gender, but there is a particular chapter that's on home by a woman called Pernilla Herbert, who gave a presentation as part of our launch. And that actually crosses over, and there are different chapters, aren't there, that actually draw out a whole lot of gender issues. So that there are some people who talk about as couples and with their friends building their own very modest houses, and there you get some reflections on some of the gender bias and the need for people to be really supportive of training in both areas and all of that kind of thing.
I think it's like the gender, the feminist approach is all behind this, but not so much mentioned because, well, I think we have a good balance of authors that are that are part that actually come from this background, but that don't. Yeah, in this case, we try to work with them.
Yeah, and what Pernilla sort of underlies her chapter is that the home is so important to people, but it's traditionally been feminized, and that she projects that this can be a place of revolution. And in a certain sense, all of the authors that are looking at housing and housing for degrowth are seeing the potential for housing being a lot more than just a place to sleep. And there are gender implications in all of that, because what it does is it brings men back into the household. Yeah. So I think it's a really interesting kind of aspect, the whole gender aspect, which we don't, as I say, deal with front on, but it's kind of more interlinked in different places.
What I want to say also is that we develop a narrative of housing, like a story of transformation of the housing, which like builds on all the actors within the housing. But we don't come with like a new truth in the sense that there remain a lot of debates of what to give priority to and all these things. And I think the book is full of debates, which is interesting for a book like this. We don't come with like, okay, this is the truth. No, we have very important debates of the level of centralization, on cities versus countryside, on top-down versus bottom-up, all these issues, on, like which are really hot debates that which we don't want to avoid, and to let think that okay, we know the truth. No, it's like
these are all evolving
needs to evolve
responses,
like,
right?
This is really evolving story that builds on all the contributions, like, on all the point of views. Like.
That's great. Sorry.
Yeah, we deliberately went out and got a couple of provocative kind of chapters, especially arguing for cities. And then we have got 3 sets of respondents to those interventions, and it's a way of revealing that the degrowth movement is mature enough to be sophisticated in the way that different degrowth proponents take different positions, but we're still listening and arguing and working through that. I suppose one of the ways that some of that is resolved is simply by the observation that in different areas, different kinds of emphases on decentralisation or cities is appropriate given the geography and the cultural background.
Yeah, on the debate we have actually leads to the importance of promoting the idea of open localism, of the idea of being linked to our local environment, but also not being closed. Actually, on simplicity, degrowth, and so on, enabling to keep this openness at the end. Like which, if everybody has to defend noise wealth, then we make the what you call like the close communities. You make borders, you make gated communities, and this is like, yeah, this is a product of the growth, the growth narrative, like.
But then there's also the difficult issues of private property and inheritance and all of that, which obviously there's no consensus on even within the social movements, right? So do you kind of come across those also as well?
Well, I thought it was really interesting the extent to which the session that we were just in, where we had a whole lot of questions around expropriation and
accusation by the state.
All of those kinds of things. I mean, I think that a lot of people are actually a lot more inclined towards there not being property and people actually being stewards of the land. And like, so I find it actually quite amazing the extent to which people, at least in theory, agree with that. But we're all trapped in a kind of society where there are lots of forces which you have to negotiate as a person. Yeah, but what's really good is opening that debate so that you have various models like community land trusts or cooperatives where the attempt is made to take land out of the market, but it's still by the state and through law called private property, even if it's collective property. So there's a lot of engagement needed here with those harsh structures of capitalism.
Well, Anitra and Francois, thanks a lot. It's fascinating. Good luck for the book. And I think we'd be also happy to put you in touch with some of the other Indian movements that are trying this. So let's build those connections.
Yeah, that would be brilliant.
Okay. Thank you.
Really like that. Thank you so much. That's great.